I think it can be really helpful to kind of set some boundaries while knowing that it's going to feel uncomfortable. And right, like I'm thinking about a friend of mine who does the digital Sabbath thing. Like every Sunday he's not on his phone. And
That's exactly what I said to my friend the other day. I said, everyone's entitled to one day off. Think of it as a digital Sabbath. And
yeah,
I didn't know that was a term.
oh yeah, there's
Yeah.
Tiffany Schlein wrote a great book about that. So it's definitely a thing that you can, if that's something that anyone is interested in, there's plenty of writing and people sort of experimenting with that. But the thing that he told me was, he was worried about it because a person who's doing digital Sabbath, that's going to affect your communications with other people, right? And he was kind of worried that people he knew were going to put up a lot of resistance to this. And he said that there was initially a little bit of resistance, but then he was very surprised by how accommodating everyone else was. So I think sometimes, especially if you're a people pleaser, or which women often are, right? You kind of forget that you can ask for things, right? Like you can ask a partner, I need some alone time, or, I need like, this number of hours a week for something, right? And this is assuming that you can get away with these things, but I think sometimes we don't ask. So there's
Yes,
some low hanging
I
fruit.
agree. And that martyrdom of us constantly giving and serving, and that trope that we're expected to do, or the actual cultural reality that is imposed on us,
You have to believe,
keeps us thinking we can't get that time. And I'm not saying everyone can get an equal amount, but I don't know. For me, my mental health critically requires me to take some alone time on a regular basis, some time where I'm quiet, reflective, not talking, but also not beholden to anyone else's demands and expectations. Don't do that.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, if you're to do that, you have to believe, in some sense that it's that you're worth it, right? And I would say to anyone who has a problem with that, like, because I have in the past, right? Like, if you feel guilt about that, if it helps you to kind of reframe it by thinking about the people in your life that you're close to, that you want them to also experience the best version of you, right? Like, you want to be present with others. Like, that's, it's not just about you. If that helps you, I think for some people, they kind of need to think about it that way in order to do something that appears selfish, right?
Absolutely. I say that to moms all the time. Okay, so what would this be like if you were just doing it as an example to your daughters? And then they're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah,
not for myself, right? But I can do it as an example for my daughters.
Yeah. And I think, just being also, there's a lot of cultural norms around busyness that I think you have to be aware of and really willing to, you're going to come up against them. I always think about this woman that I know who's an older woman who's an artist, and every Wednesday she goes on a really long walk from her studio. And she said one day she ran into a friend, and the friend was like, oh, what are you doing right now? And she was like, nothing. She's like, every Wednesday, I do nothing. And the friend was so judgy about it. She was like, oh, no, what she said was, you must have a lot of time, right? Like, that's the kind of the result. And I think you just have to be prepared for that some people are going to feel a certain way about it, but ultimately, like, that just speaks to how culturally entrenched busyness is. And it's just,
and then if we reflect on the ways that we are using up time that don't feel healthy, where you could get lost in a social media scroll for 40 minutes or end up in some situation that you don't need to be in, and how can we be cognizant of setting those boundaries so we can carve out the little bits